Hey creative friends, so today I'm going to swatch for you the 16 colors that I use most often in my watercolor palette. And it's the 16 colors I believe is the perfect watercolor palette if you want to paint flowers. And after swatching, we will use all the colors and all 16 colors to create this mix crazy loose bouquet of flowers. So just to show you how I apply all the colors to go straight into this. And if you have been following me here on my channel, you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. It's just right there. Hit it and it will really help me grow my channel and motivate me to make more content like this for you. Otherwise, let's dive right into the video. I want to show you quickly the actual palette that I'm using, and it's a Shinhan Watercolour 42 Wells palette. It's made out of plastic and I love it because, well, it's got 42 wells and it's really hard to find plastic watercolor palette that is this big. I had the 33 well one and I upgraded to this about a year ago, and in fact I still run out of wells, but to be honest, like I said, I don't use all of them, but it's just nice to have a nice big palette. I also like it because if you see, these wells are actually quite deep and slanted. So when I use my big brush, sometimes I like to go in with like even this 1-inch flat. It fits all the way into the well and I can scrape some of it off and it's great. The only thing is that it doesn't have dividers for the mixing bits, and I thought it would bother me at first, but you know, over time I actually learned how to just manage the colors, and I don't mind the colors mixing up that much anyway. If you follow me on my painting tutorials, you'll see how I kind of manage this all, which is basically I don't, it's just practice over time. Let's talk about how I organize the colors. I do it by sort of almost a rainbow. So I do the warm colors here, going with yellow and then going into the orangey red pinks, and then I flow it into the purple. Ignore this blue here, I just had I needed to put a place for blue and I didn't have a spot, so that's where it went. Then I go into my purples, and then from here I kind of start with my blues and then flowing into my green, and then eventually earth tones, the browns, and then my gray, which is very similar to my black, and I'll show you why. What I do is I buy tube paints and then I squeeze them into the palette to dry overnight. The next day, usually, it'll be quite dry, and all I need to do to activate it is spray down with some water like this. This way you don't waste any of the paint, and I love that. I love that in watercolor there's no wastage. You can always keep using it and nothing ever goes to waste. Therefore, a tube of paint can last for a long time. Finally, let's start swatching. Okay, and the first color I want to show you is lemon yellow. So lemon yellow, I am currently using a PwC Shinhan. I started out with Winsor & Newton, but over the years I've tried different brands, and this is the one I currently have now. It's actually slightly more opaque than the other lemon yellows that I've used before, which can muddy up your colors when you're mixing, but it's really nice to use when you are making stamens and things like that. So, alright, and the paper I'm using here is just 100% cotton paper from this shop in Singapore called Overjoyed. And let's give it a go. I don't use it often, but I think it'll do for swatching. So there we go. Lemon yellow is one of the cool yellows that we have. It looks really nice and opaque when it's saturated, and then it pulls out into a nice, cool, almost greenish yellow. There we go, lemon yellow. The next color that I use quite often is gamboge. So gamboge is a very warm yellow, almost orange, and this one is by M. Graham. I was testing all these paints brands when I started painting, and I chanced upon this gamboge at the store, and I was so surprised when I took it out to use it because it's actually really beautiful. It's delicious dark yellow, in between yellow and orange, I would say. There we go, that's gamboge. The next color I use and brand is Cadmium Orange by Rembrandt. And to be honest, I don't use orange a whole lot, but it's in there. It's a good convenience color to have. And this one by Rembrandt is very vibrant. It's almost quite fake looking. So if you find that it's too bright, you can always dull it down with some burnt umber, something that can mute it a little bit. Lovely. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is Scarlet Lake. Now, Scarlet Lake, I used to also have the Winsor & Newton Scarlet Lake, and it's just so beautiful. It's like orangey red. And this PwC Shinhan one is as well quite lovely. I have no complaints. No complaints. Ooh, look at it. And you need this when you're a floral artist, you really do. Because it's a beautiful color on its own, but it also mixes really lovelyly with pinks and yellows. Next, this is quite new in my palette. It's Quinacridone Coral by Daniel Smith. And it's just so lovely. It's a tad close to Scarlet, but maybe on the more, I don't know, cool side. And also just a gorgeous red to have in your watercolor palette, especially for flowers. The sixth color on my palette that it's a total necessary, it's Opera. Opera Pink or Opera Rose. And I have the PwC Shinhan one. Used to have the Winsor & Newton one, which is also amazing. And there we have this gorgeous, super bright fluorescent pink. On its own, it's beautiful for an accent color, and also lovely to mix it into other colors to give it that oomph. Super bright, punchy color. Next is Permanent Rose, or the brand I use, Rembrandt, calls it Quinacridone Rose, right? It's PV19. And I think this is probably the most go-to color in my palette. As you can see, I have a big tube of it. Here's one of my biggest tubes, and it's almost done. I use this color a whole lot. It's my standard go-to pink. You can't fault it. It leans on like the fuchsia side, magenta-y, fuchsia, purpley end of the scale, and just absolutely necessary for florals. The next one on my palette is Dragon's Blood by My Mary Blue, and this one was recommended by Jenna Rainey on her channel, and I was so intrigued because I just never really had this shade before. I never thought that it would fit so well in my palette, and I always thought maybe it's a bit too earthy, a bit too dark, but I actually find myself reaching for it quite often. It mixes incredibly well with purple, dioxazine, and just look at it. It's just, oh, beautiful. Okay, now we're going into the purples. A lot of people have dioxazine purple, which is this one here, and you should have it too, I suppose. It's very good to use this to mix. But if I want to just use a purple of its own, I find dioxazine purple way too bright and artificial. So I go for a mauve, M-A-U-V-E, mauve, by Rembrandt is the color I have. And let me show you the mauve color. Okay, we're gonna go into the second row here. This is the 9th color. Mauve. See, it's like a warmer shade of purple. And purple is something that is quite tricky to mix yourself. People should know, if you do color mixing, okay? So it can always get a bit too muddy when you try to mix purple, so it's good to have a convenience bottle in your palette. Right, let's get into the one blue that I use most often. I have a ton of blue, as you can tell. I love buying blues, but I end up not using blues as much because blues appear maybe slightly less in flowers, and I'm just less of a blue kind of gal. In any case, Cobalt Blue. The Cobalt Blue by Daniel Smith. I don't have that many Daniel Smith colors because they're quite expensive where I live, and I find them sometimes even too transparent for my liking. I sometimes have to scrub quite a bit to get the colors activated, and in my style of painting, maybe that's a bit too hard work for me, but I think a lot of landscape people love Daniel Smith. So there you go, Daniel Smith Cobalt Blue. The next blue that I go to most often is indigo. So indigo is the dark blue. Think of dark blue printing in that like a traditional dark blue ink. I use dark blue, this indigo, for shadows sometimes. When I want to mix up a dark green, I add my green with this indigo, and it's so lovely. What's up, doggy? All right, heading into my greens now. Now the first green I use quite often is shadow green. This is by PwC Shinhan, and I think other brands call it Paraline green, and it's a convenience dark green that I just grab when I just want a bit of dark green, and it's stunning. Simple, moody, dark green, crowd pleaser, if you ask me. And you can mix this green by mixing sap green and purple, or dark Cezine purple, same. Next, sap green. I have my Winsor & Newton one here. I have a couple of brands of sap green because I use this a lot. But this Winsor & Newton one, I actually really like it because it's not too opaque, it's not too transparent, and it is vibrant. So happy and vibrant. I started using the Cotman paint, Winsor & Newton Cotman, and I was so frustrated by the sap green in that brand. And I realized it was because I was using the student grade Winsor & Newton. When I finally upgraded to the professional level and I opened this sap green, I was like, this is what we're talking about now. Okay, the next one is Azo Green, or green gold, some brands call it. This one's M. Graham. And I mean, I don't even need to explain why this is in my palette. You just have to look at it. It can just elevate any floral painting. If you add a bit of green gold, lovely. Finally, the one and only brown that I use most often, Burnt Umber. This one is Holbein. I know it's a rather random Holbein color in here, but I do have a Holbein, and yeah, I'm very happy with this Holbein Burnt Umber. And you definitely need this for trunks and stems and thorns and all the parts of floral that needs a brown. Finally, Payne's Grey is my black replacement. I find it's sufficient for me to use Payne's Grey. Actually, I have very little left in my palette, so I do need to squeeze some of it out. There we go. M. Graham is one of the more watery brand of paints because they use honey. And in countries where it's quite humid, you might find that an issue. But here in Australia, it's totally fine. So Payne's Grey, I use this instead of black because it's more versatile. It's kind of leaning onto the blue side, so it's wonderful for shadows or mixing this into any color to make it darker. Payne's Grey. And there you have it, my 16 colors that I feel makes my perfect watercolor palette. So there you have it, the 16 colors that I used most often in my floral watercolor paintings. And initially, I was going to include this painting, which I've used all the 16 colors in one painting in this video as well, but the video just got too long. So if you want to watch me use all of my colors into one crazy painting like this, you can continue and watch the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It will really help me grow my channel. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.